Hello, all you amazing women, and welcome to How to Feel Like a Midlife Goddess. With me, Amanda Ryder, nutritionist and author. Now, I call this podcast How to Feel Like a Midlife Goddess because, let's face it, so many of us don't feel like shining in midlife. We can be grappling with physical and psychological symptoms, which can lead to a real loss of confidence, and it can feel like you're really losing your identity. However, I believe it's possible for us all to feel good at this time of our lives. So each week, I'm going to be sharing with you my best nutrition and lifestyle advice, as well as interviewing expert speakers. And week by week, together, we will build upon a foundation of healthy, sustainable habits that will really benefit us and make all the difference to how we feel. So stay tuned, because this is your recipe for thriving at midlife and bringing out your inner goddess. Hi everyone. Today we are joined by Sarah Rusbatch, author of the best-selling book Beyond Booze. She's also an award-winning health and well-being coach, an accredited grey area drinking coach, a menopause accredited coach, a motivational speaker, and a passionate ambassador for helping as many women as possible to live their best life. As you might imagine, her book is about alcohol and her relationship with it. And she gave up alcohol in April 2019, and she says she's never looked back. Now she's on a mission to support as many women as possible to change their relationship with alcohol, reconnect to themselves, and create a happier, healthier, and more fulfilling life. So whether you're interested in how alcohol affects us in midlife, or you're just curious about your relationship with alcohol, I think you're going to enjoy today's chat with Sarah, because as midlife women, some of us can start to feel more anxious, especially as our progesterone starts to slide. And Sarah's really going to help us sort of understand that mechanism, what we can do about it. So hi, Sarah. Great to have you chatting with us today.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, Sarah is speaking to us from Perth. So Sarah, tell us about your relationship with alcohol and why you decided to give it up.
Yeah, so I grew up in the north of England. I live in Australia. I've been here for 15 years, but home is still Manchester. And I, like many Brits in the 90s, 80s, started drinking at quite a young age. Alcohol was never a question of if I would start drinking. It was more a question of when I would start drinking. And for me, that started down in the local park, of filling soda stream bottles with whatever we could find in our parents' drinks cabinet, heading down the park, getting pissed, snogging a local boy, throwing up in the bushes, going home and doing it all again the next weekend. And that was kind of just the initiation, I'm sure, of many teenage girls across Britain at the time, where we were just starting to move towards this whole era of girl power. We were just coming towards the Spice Girls and Sex and the City, and just starting to really have this movement where women can do it the same as the guys. We don't need a man to buy us drinks. We can buy our own drinks. We can earn our own money. We can be independent. And there was a real movement with that. And with that was also the use of alcohol. And, and remember as well, this was a time that the alcohol industry also identified that they were not making enough money from women, and so decided to introduce drinks that they thought would be more palatable towards women. So we started getting all the alcopops, as they're often called, which were just considered to be a bit more palatable. And so alcohol use at that time for me was a form of connection. It was a way of meeting people, a way of making friends. And there was nothing really untoward, or that anyone would have gone, oh, Sarah's got a really big problem with alcohol. I probably was the one that loved the party to keep going. I was the one that started the party. I was the one that was the last to leave the party. I had a high capacity for alcohol, so I wasn't someone that had 2 drinks and fell over drunk. I got a bit pissed, and then I maintained that pissedness for the night. And I saw that as a badge of honor. I saw that as something to be celebrated. Didn't really suffer from terrible hangovers, had a very strong ability to get up the next day, go to work, whatever was necessary. By the time I finished uni, I moved to London. I worked in recruitment in the 90s. This was a period of time where you were taking clients out for very boozy lunches. You were doing shots of tequila on a Monday night. Like, it was pretty standard in London at the time. For me, it probably changed most after having kids. And we made that decision to move to Australia. And all of a sudden, I found myself on the other side of the world with no family, trying to make friends. Didn't have my identity as the career woman that I had been. I didn't have independence of being able to go out whenever I wanted. I had two under two. I was spending my days pureeing carrot, cleaning up baby sick, going to monkey music. And I didn't know who I was anymore. And so I had the double whammy of going through that, which I think every woman goes through, but compounded with being on the other side of the world with no family support, with no friends that I'd known for a really long time, and feeling incredibly homesick and incredibly lonely. And alcohol then becoming a bit more of a crutch to make all those feelings go away, because alcohol is very good at doing that. And I didn't drink to the point where I was passing out every day or anything like that, but it just became that thing that I look forward to. So 5 o'clock, I can have a drink, husband will be home. It just was something that became the habit, the little dopamine hit that I got from looking forward to that evening wine. But very quickly, tolerance builds up. One glass becomes two, becomes three. And while I never would have described myself at any point as an alcoholic, I definitely had a reliance on alcohol emotionally to manage stress, to make me feel better if I was feeling crap. I then, the kids grow up, I was running my own business, I had all of that stress of doing the juggle, and alcohol became the reward, it became the relaxant at the end of the day. But then once I got into my 40s was when I really noticed a difference in how I responded to alcohol. The hangovers began to kick in, the sleep, it was really disturbing my sleep, and I was waking at 2 or 3 in the morning. I started to have more anxiety and just became more a shell of myself. And that was the time that I decided I'm going to take a break from alcohol. I want to see how I feel without it. And
So what was the trigger, Sarah? I mean, what you've just described, I had a similar situation myself. We went to Spain and, I brought my kids up in Spain near Barcelona, and, again, no family, and all our friends that we met there were, new friends, and they had their kids to look after, and their husbands or wives were working long hours, mainly husbands. But, so it was 7 o'clock, you had a drink, or we went out together and had a drink, and it was all, focused around the drink. And you don't think you've got a problem. It's just, like you said, you use it as a relaxant, as a reward. So, and it all felt quite normal. So what was your trigger to think, this is too much?
I think there's a couple of things, actually, Amanda. I think there was a couple of parties where I got incredibly drunk. One of them, I fell over, I smashed my face, I cut my lip open, I cut my nose.
Oh, gosh.
And had to get, just like one of those awful parties where you're really pissed. I've got outside to put a cigarette out, crouched down to put it out, had no reflexes, toppled forward, didn't put my hands out, and landed face first on a concrete driveway, which is not fun. And the next morning, I got woken up by my 5-year-old daughter standing next to my bed going, "Mummy, what happened to your face?" And in that moment, I just felt just such self-loathing and such shame, and just was like, this is not good. This is not the mum that I want to be. This is not the woman I want to be. And so that was a wake-up call. But I went to my doctor with really bad anxiety, and I'd never had anxiety in my life. And at no point did she say to me, "What's your alcohol use like?" She happily gave me a prescription for anti-anxiety meds, but the conversation around alcohol didn't come up. And while I didn't put two and two together and think that there was any connection between alcohol and the way that I was feeling, I didn't feel like I wanted to take the tablets. And then it was just so happened that the day after the face planting incident, I was lying on the sofa, as you do, scrolling Facebook, as you do, and someone in my running group said that, because this was the thing, I still ran half marathons, I still did all the things on paper, but I just had this secret dirty reliance on that evening wine that was sometimes a glass, sometimes a bottle, sometimes more. I never knew how much it would end up being that night. But I had these rules that were like, oh, I don't drink Monday and Tuesday, because if I don't drink Monday and Tuesday, I don't have a problem. And I don't drink in the morning, and I don't drink before 5 o'clock. So I created these constraints around my drinking where it was taking up a lot of headspace. And this woman in my running group had posted about a book that she'd read that had changed her relationship with alcohol, that had led to her getting faster times in her half marathons. So I was like, oh, changed her relationship with alcohol. And I think I was just ready at that moment. A few seeds had been planted. There'd been a few silent conversations. I would never have said it out loud. And honestly, no one would have said to me, Sarah, I'm really worried about your drinking. Because I drank like most women around me, right? I like, the thing about grey area drinkers is we tend to surround ourselves with other grey area drinkers. So when you're in that kind of that box of people that are all doing the same thing, you just think it's totally normal.
Can you just clarify what the grey area drinking is? It doesn't mean anything to me, but I said in the intro that you're a grey area drinking coach. What is grey area drinking for us Brits? Is it a thing in the UK, or is it an Australian thing?
No, it's from the US.
Okay.
And so it describes the place between, so let's say you've got a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is someone who doesn't drink or maybe has a glass of champagne at a wedding once a year. 10 is someone with physical dependency on alcohol, so someone who you would consider the stereotypical alcoholic, in quote marks, who perhaps has got physical dependency on alcohol and needs to have medical treatment to safely withdraw from alcohol, because alcohol is one of only 3 substances that the human body can actually die from withdrawal from. So you've got a 1 and a 10, but not many people sit at a 1 or a 10. Mm. Grey area drinking describes the place in the middle. So on that scale, I would describe it as about between a 4 and an 8. So we've got past the point. We're not a 1, 2, or 3 where we don't have a relationship with alcohol at that 1, 2, or 3. Like my friend Nat, you go to the pub and you'll say, Nat, do you want a drink? And she'll be like, do I want a drink? Do I want a drink? I could have a Diet Coke. I could have a cider. What do I feel like? Like alcohol, she just doesn't care. Whereas for me, I'd have been like, do I want a drink? Is the Pope Catholic? Like I would have probably had a drink before I even got to the pub. So we've reached that point in our relationship with alcohol where we use it for something. The thought, we know that we're in that grey area zone, because for all your listeners, if I say to you now, right, let's take 90 days off. Let's take 90 days off and do an experiment and see how you feel without it. For most grey area drinkers, there will be many, many reasons and excuses why they can't do that.
90 days sounds like loads. Yeah, sounds like
right.
Yeah,
even 30 days. Even 30 days.
Yeah, totally
but
agree.
Some of the signs that you're in a grey area would be the first one would be you're drinking more than the 10 units a week. So 10 units is not 10 glasses. So 10 units is generally around 5 glasses. And that would be the maximum recommendation for women.
Is this within the grey area drinking sort of umbrella? Because in the UK, you probably know it's 14 units.
This would be the guidelines.
Okay, so in the UK, it's 14 units a week, which always seems a bit crazy to me, because it's the same for women and men. When women have much smaller livers and are much smaller, so they don't, just absorb as much in their bodies. There's not as much, area for them to, So it's kind of much more concentrated and, more dilute in men, but it's the same 14 units. But that's
the UK.
Yeah, so a unit here is, like 175 millilitres of wine is about 2.3 units, which is, standard glass. And most people are having large glasses, in pubs like 250. So it's really easy to go over that 10 or 14.
Yeah, so the limit in Australia is 10 units per week. The UK is the only country that I know of that has the same limit for men and women.
Is it?
Most countries have a smaller, lower amount for women. But outside of talking about numbers, the signs that you're in the grey area are, well, that first one is the thought of taking a break for 30 or 60 days feels impossible. The second thing is you make rules around your drinking. So I don't drink Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't drink before 5 o'clock. I don't drink. So you have all these rules, but then you can find justifications to break the rules. So you can be like, oh, I know I don't drink on a Wednesday, but I've got this, I've seen this girlfriend and I won't drink tomorrow. So I'll have, like, we just get into that internal chatter about alcohol quite a lot. Perhaps we've noticed that alcohol is starting to impact us more negatively. So, which is very common for women as we age. After 40, I find especially that there's more disruption to sleep, there's more disruption to neurotransmitters, we can have lower mood, we can feel a lot more anxious the next day, we can feel a lot more lethargic. And then there will be the other signs of estrogen dominance, weight gain around the midsection, lots of different aspects that can go on. So we start noticing some of these negative impacts, and we say to ourselves, oh, I need to change my drinking, I need to drink less. But all of those attempts don't really see into fruition. We don't create long-term change. We often drink more than we intend to. So I'm just going to go to my friend's house and have one, and then it's usually leave the car, get an Uber home, have a bottle. We're just not fully on top of that relationship with alcohol. It's something that we rely on emotionally. So if the first thought we have when we've had a stressful situation, a difficult situation, an argument with a partner, a discussion with a boss that has left us feeling uneasy, the kids are driving us nuts, like if the first thought is always, I need a drink, we're probably in that grey area.
I think a lot of people in that grey area. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, what I've heard is that it could be as many as 2 billion. But what's interesting is alcohol use disorder, which is described as anything above the 10, 14 units a week, has increased in women by 87% in the last 30 years. Gosh. So midlife women is the only demographic where alcohol use is going up and not down.
Yeah. And why do you think that is, Sarah?
I think there's a couple of reasons. I think, number one, the marketing of alcohol. So I talked earlier about the 30 years ago. It's not a coincidence that it's increased in 30 years. And it was 30 years ago that the alcohol industry began to target women specifically with their campaigns. We saw the pink drinks being increased, the Instagrammability of pink drinks. We get a lot of subliminal messaging in TV shows, in films, where the woman comes home from a hard day's work, she goes straight to the fridge, she pours herself a glass of wine. Like, even we might not be consciously picking up on that, but our subconscious brain is going, oh, when you've had a hard day at work, go and have a glass of wine and it makes you feel better. Like, we're getting this messaging constantly, and we've been getting it for a really long time. So you've got that, plus at a time where women in midlife are generally the most recorded as being the most stressed and the most anxious that they have ever been in history. So you've got this demographic of women who are super stressed, super anxious, juggling so much in terms of aging parents, teenage kids, keeping the house going, full-time work, all the things.
Hormones declining.
Hormones declining. And then you've got big alcohol going, there, it's okay. I've got my beautiful pink drink made of butterflies and red currants, and you can come and have this and it will make you feel better. And in the short term, alcohol works. We're not stupid. We wouldn't keep doing something if it didn't work. And that's the problem with alcohol. In the short term, it works. The short term, you get that instant dopamine hit. You get that release of the GABA neurotransmitter that helps us instantly feel calm and relaxed. And so in that first 20 minutes or so, you get what you want. The problem is that longer term, it goes on to have very detrimental impact, particularly for women.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is that GABA, isn't it? That's a calming neurotransmitter. And when we don't have as much progesterone, and in perimenopause, like can start as early as 40, but you start, progesterone starts going down, so you don't make as much GABA. So not only have you got all those things that you mentioned, busy life, companies marketing to us strongly, and us sort of equating a nice relaxing evening with a nice elegant glass of wine, feels like we're kind of spoiling ourselves and treating ourselves. But we've also got this actual need that we're feeling stressed, and that glass of wine will help us make some, have that feeling, and we'll get some GABA. Can you talk to us a little bit more about GABA? I know you did a post on that on Instagram, didn't you, about the relationship between alcohol and GABA?
A couple of things to note are, when I work with my clients, I do a neurotransmitter assessment with them to see where their deficiencies lie. And the number one deficiency that I see is GABA. I would say over 80% of the women that I work with are deficient in GABA. And there's a reason for that. So number one, progesterone declining leads to a decline in GABA. And number two, consistent regular alcohol use leads to a decline in GABA. So there's the irony. We drink because we're stressed to get the GABA impact from the alcohol, but continually getting this GABA impact, what it does is the alcohol causes this surge in the inhibitory neurotransmitters that make us feel relaxed. So because the brain is getting this constant incoming alcohol to cause this to happen, it almost goes on strike from making its own. So we actually are making ourselves deficient by constantly drinking alcohol. But what happens after we've had this big surge of GABA is the brain wants homeostasis. It wants all our hormones to be at the right levels in total balance with each other. And this big surge of GABA takes them out of balance. So the only way the brain knows how to get the balance back is by doing a big surge of the excitatory neurotransmitters, which can be the stress hormone cortisol. So we actually make ourselves feel more stressed by drinking alcohol, because when the GABA wears off, we've got more cortisol circulating around our body, meaning most definitely the next day, we're going to be feeling stressed and anxious in the morning. I noticed this increase in anxiety because we've got more circulating cortisol, and then we're more likely to reach for the alcohol in the evening to get the GABA effect, but we're making ourselves more deficient. And we just go round and round in circles. And I see thousands of women trapped in this cycle continuously. But the biggest thing they notice, Amanda, the number one thing they notice when they do my 30-day challenge is that their anxiety all but disappears. And they feel so much calmer from removing the alcohol. And the irony is they've been drinking to make themselves calmer.
Yeah, that's incredible. And anxiety is such a horrible thing. I mean, I suffered with anxiety at 48, and I write about it in my book, but like you, I'd never suffered with anxiety. And then when it hits you, I now have a much better understanding when I have clients that suffer with anxiety, whether they're in their 30s, 50s, 60s, whatever, but I have a better understanding of what it is. It's just so unpleasant. It affects every area of life. And you just sort of, you kind of want to get out of yourself and run away. It's sort of that ever-present kind of horrible, oppressive feeling. So if you could give up alcohol for 30 days and be gone with that sounds quite something. So back to you, Sarah. Now, you decided to give up the alcohol. Did you give it up gradually, or did you just that's it? I'm drawing a line in the sand, no more alcohol for me ever.
No, so 2017 was shortly after I'd had that fall. I decided to do a 21-day reset, because they say it takes 21 days to break a habit. And I was like, I've just got a bad habit. I need to just have a bit of a detox. So I did 21 days, and I couldn't believe the difference in how I felt. So I decided to keep going. And I set myself the target of getting to 100 days. And there was a lot of things that I noticed. I noticed how much better I was sleeping. And that led to me having so much more energy, which meant that I felt more positive. My motivation at work massively increased. I made more money in that 3 months that I'd made in the whole 12 months before, because I was just super motivated, on the ball, and doing the things that slightly hungover Sarah just could never be asked to do. So I was going that extra mile. It was that extra 10% that you put in. But then it got to the end of the 100 days, and I was like, well, I can never not drink again, because that would just be weird, because I'm Sarah the party girl. And and I started to get the comments, are you still not drinking? You're so boring. When do you come back to drinking?
I think a lot of women, it's part of your identity, isn't it? It's sort of who you are. And
totally. It was who I'd been since I discovered alcohol at 14. I was Sarah the party girl. I was the life and soul of the party. And I was, the one that you could trust, that if you wanted a good night out, you'd phone Sarah, because she would always be up for it. So that 100 days was interesting, because I was like, I don't know if I can be asked going out tonight. Maybe I'm not such an extrovert. Maybe I actually do prefer different things. Maybe I'm more of a morning person. It was with curiosity that I was just observing some of the changes. But like I said, I was like, I can't never drink again. So I made the decision to have a drink, but seriously thought, I've done 100 days, so I'm not an alcoholic, because if I was an alcoholic and I had a big problem, I wouldn't have been able to. So I'll be fine. So now I'm going to be a grown-up drinker. Now I'll be someone that just has their glass of wine or two and, calls it a day, can just enjoy nice wine with dinner, and that'll be that. And that first night that I drank after 100 days, I had my one glass and I was all smug and thought, oh, yeah, I am, I'm a grown-up now. I can drink like grown-ups. And within a month, I was back to drinking the same as before, because that is how it is for grey area drinkers. When you've passed the point of being a take it or leave it drinker, and when you have created a neural pathway in your brain that says, when I'm stressed, alcohol is the solution, the moment you let alcohol back into your life, the stress isn't gone anywhere. The neural pathway is still there. Your brain then starts craving alcohol because it knows it's a quick fix. Your brain isn't thinking, oh, you're going to feel shit in the morning, you're going to feel terrible. Your brain is going, what's the solution to the way I'm feeling right now? And you've always used alcohol. And so this is why for so many grey area drinkers, it's easier to have none than it is to have one. And so I went back to drinking. And then what followed for me was 2 years of taking breaks, going back to drinking, fighting so hard to be able to moderate, like really thinking that the pinnacle of success of what I needed was to be able to be a grown-up moderate drinker who just had a drink every now and then. And finally, in April 2019, after a very honest conversation with a friend, I actually realized, she said to me, everything in your life is better when you don't drink. You're happier, you're more positive, you have more energy, you tell me you're a better mum, you're a better wife, you're a better friend, like all the positives that you get. And yet every time you go back to drinking, I watch you battle again with anxiety, with low mood, with tired, with not keeping the promises that you make to yourself that then lead to you having negative self-talk and, all of those things. And when she said that to me, it was just like this fog had lifted. And I was just like, I'm done. Like, I have partied till the cows come home. I have had my fair share, but I really feel like this is the next chapter of my life. And I'm going to explore what that looks like for me, alcohol free. So that was April 2019. And I said to people I was doing a year, because I said I've never done a year before, so I'll do the year and see how I go. But in my heart, I knew that it would be forever, because I'd got to the point where there was just no benefit to drinking. And when you do the work on yourself, I still go to parties, I still go to clubs, I still go to concerts, I still do all the things that I did when I was drinking, but I like to do them earlier. I like to be home in bed earlier. I like to get up in the morning and I get my dopamine hits from exercise, from sunshine, from time with my family, like the whole of my priorities in my life have changed. I'm such a different mum. And because of the work that I've done on myself as a result of being alcohol free has meant that I've developed tools for emotional regulation that I'm now able to teach my 13-year-old daughter, who is a hormonal mess, as many of them are at that time. But if I was still drinking, I'd probably just be drinking more. I'm in the thick of perimenopause. She's coming into puberty. It would be a shit show in my house right now if that was the way that it was going to continue. But I've got tools now. I know how to manage my stress. I know how to regulate her. I know tools to give her. And I'm so grateful that as a mum, she's not just watching me get pissed as a solution to every single one of life's problems, and she's actually seeing me handle it in such a different way.
Yeah, it's a really good life lesson for her, isn't it? And I think kids do look at you, what you do rather than what you say, as a sort of learning, as a learning board. Two questions come to mind. When you say you go out to all these events, I mean, I do this, and I'm sure, women listening will think the same thing. But if I'm going out and I'm thinking, okay, I'm not going to drink, I kind of get there and I think, oh, I'm being a bit boring. Or maybe I think, oh, I'm not enjoying myself quite as much because I'm not as, I'm a bit more inhibited than maybe I would be if I'd had a few drinks. And then sometimes I think, I don't know if I want that. I don't know if I want to be that sort of, that person. I want to be like, I want to join in, and it's kind of social connection. What would you say to that kind of thinking?
But I think that it's like bonkers, really, that we think we've got to change our personality to have a good time. because a lot of my clients find that in sobriety, they're actually quite introverted, and they and they're drinking to give them confidence to be in those group situations that actually they don't enjoy if they're not drinking. And then my whole thing is, well, if you need alcohol to enjoy a person or to enjoy an event or a situation, you don't enjoy it. So go and find what you actually enjoy without needing to take a substance that alters your mind, causes cancer, disrupts your sleep, does all of these things. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's bonkers when we actually think about it. And so what going alcohol-free gives you is the opportunity to actually be yourself and be authentic, as opposed to needing to get pissed to feel like you fit in more. Because if you're with the right people, I've got people that I can just be completely silly with, and we will dance and we will be absolutely bonkers without a single drink, because they just raise my energy because of the type of people that they are. And so it's finding who those people are, because people will judge. People who have a problem with alcohol will judge people who don't drink and think they're boring because they can't possibly think about what their life would be like without alcohol. But that just, to me, shows what problem they have with alcohol.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I find, I have really cut back my drinking in the last 10 years, and it does make such difference to how you feel the next day, and just generally your skin is better. I find I'm sharper, and you don't realize until you've got it again that what you didn't have, but it's like all these things. And
yeah.
But sometimes I go out and, like you described one of your friends, I'm now that person like, shall I have a drink or shall I not? What am I doing tomorrow? Do I really want it? And I'll only do it, when I really, really want it. I don't just do it as a habit anymore, which I certainly have done for the last however many decades. But my other question is, you know how some people, and I don't know if you put yourself in this category, but some people will have a drink and it lights them up, and then they want another one and another one and another one. And they've kind of got that kind of personality that they can easily go down that sort of, alcoholism route. Whereas others, like, they have 2 or 3 drinks and they're like, I've had enough now. I don't need any more. So, and of course, if you're in the other camp, probably that's still grey area drinking. You think, you're not an alcoholic, therefore, you can have a drink, but it's still really easy to overdrink and kid yourself. And, but for those people that do have, that kind of, they're so lit up by it, they're the ones that have to give it up totally. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so I would definitely put myself in that category. Like on the Huberman podcast, he says you can put a group of like late teen, early 20s in a room at a party and give them all booze and go round and pick the ones that are likely to develop alcohol use disorder, because they're the ones whose brains get lit up like a bloody Christmas tree when they've had a drink. Yeah. And that was totally me. I just got louder. I got more vivacious. I got so lit up by alcohol. Whereas my friend Christine, after 3 drinks, she's like tired and wants a cup of tea. And I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? And so there was definitely, and that's definitely brain chemistry as well, as to how lit up we get. And so for people like that, and something I have to be so conscious of is I need dopamine hits from other areas. And so it's just making sure that when we take alcohol out, particularly if you're that type of person, you can't not add anything in. You have to look at, okay, the booze is gone. This is what it's been giving me. What is it that I'm now adding in to replace that? So for a lot of people, exercise comes in number 1 as the thing. Cold water therapy is really good. You get a 6-hour dopamine hit from an ice bath that, can make you feel absolutely fantastic. We've got to be so hot on our diet with making sure that we're getting all the right foods that help to boost dopamine. And that's why doing like a neurotransmitter assessment, which is what I do with my coaching clients, is so important, because it can really, really make a difference to reducing those cravings for alcohol.
How do you assess someone's neurotransmitters, Sarah?
It's a very detailed questionnaire.
Okay, yeah. And just with yourself, you talk about it like, I gave up for 21 days and 100 in a year. You make it sound so easy. It obviously wasn't. And you must have struggled. And if someone's listening and think, yeah, I really want to either cut back or stop drinking altogether, what would your advice be to just getting started and overcoming that? You've done it for a week and then, your husband's saying to you on Friday night, "I'll have a glass of wine." How can women, stay on that track and be determined to give it up for a short period of time?
So the thing that really helped me was a couple of things. So number one was being in a community with other women, so that you had somewhere to go. And that's why I run these women's alcohol-free challenges, so that everyone's doing it at the same time. You've got a safe space to be able to come in and go, "Oh my God, my husband's just come home pissed. He's really annoying me. He's trying to get me to drink, help." And then someone's coming in and just automatically replying. So you feel that you've got that. All the books and podcasts, there's so many fantastic resources out there. I've written a book, Beyond Booze. There's some other brilliant books out there to just stay inspired of reading stories of women who've gone before you, who are going, it's not shit. It's actually amazing when you change your relationship with alcohol and you start feeling great. So the books, the podcasts, joining a community of women, getting really clear on your why, because and that's the first thing that I think I did, was I wrote down all 10 reasons as to why I wanted to change my drinking. And it went quite deep into, the role modeling that I wanted to do to my kids, to the negative self-talk that was coming up in my head, to actually, I was 43 when I stopped. And I just had this thought that I was like, I could be halfway through my life. And I've partied a lot. And when I vision my 60, 70, 80-year-old self, I need to start looking after her. And that comes from the decisions that I make now. And I've interviewed incredible global world guest experts on alcohol and what it does to the brain, what it does to the liver, what it does to the kidneys, the cancer risk, particularly breast cancer for women. When you know that, you can't unknow it. And I say to women, go and educate yourselves, because we live in a world where alcohol is promoted, advertised, and marketed as the innocent solution to every single problem. And no one says, oh, 1 in 5 breast cancer deaths are caused by alcohol. 1 in 5 breast cancer diagnoses are caused by alcohol. Alcohol-related stroke happens to men and women, and happens 7 times faster to a woman because her body cannot metabolize alcohol as effectively. As a woman ages, the enzyme ALDH, which is the enzyme that breaks down alcohol
dehydrogenase,
alcohol dehydrogenase, we produce less of it as we age. So a woman in her 40s and 50s and 60s cannot metabolize alcohol like she could in her 20s. So more of that alcohol enters her bloodstream, which is what makes her more prone to alcohol-related chronic health conditions and diseases. But no one's talking about this. And, we have all these like health warnings on cigarettes, but in 2019, the Lancet came out and said alcohol is in the same cancer carcinogenic category as tobacco, meaning smoking 10 cigarettes has the same carcinogenic impact as drinking a bottle of wine. And yet we applaud people for stopping smoking and we criticize them for stopping drinking. And it's hard in an alcohol-centric world. I had people say
it's so ingrained into society, isn't it? Every meal, lunch, dinner that you have out, you're always offered wine. It's very normalized. And you feel like, you said, you're in the safe space. It's fine. But when you start talking about the health risks, I mean, they're massive. I mean, again, just getting older, we are more prone to breast cancer. And most women, that's the one thing we fear, even though most of us are going to die from heart disease or Alzheimer's or dementia. They're what will get most of us. But it's, breast cancer diagnosis, most people, it's so frightening, just the prospect of it. And, by drinking, you are increasing your risk because you have more circulating estrogen and damage to DNA. It's, if you really start doing, some research on it and reading around it, it's really very scary. And it doesn't take much. I think it's like as much as one glass of wine a day. It's like, it's what people might consider as really low level of drinking.
Oh, it'd be much less than that. So the World Health Organization has said there's no safe amount of alcohol, and they recommend no more than 2 units per week. Huberman on his podcast says every drink that we have over 3 units per week increases our chance of breast cancer by between 4 and 13%. So it's not 1 drink a day. No, it's probably 2 drinks a week.
Yeah.
And
it's not very much, is it?
It's not. And this is what gets me. Like, I am all pro-choice. Like, I'm not here to tell your listeners, you must never drink again. Like, everyone needs to make their own decisions. But I believe everyone should have access to the truth and to the real information, instead of being blindsided by an industry that spends billions of pounds, dollars every year trying to get us to drink more, telling us that it's our reward, our relaxant, and something that we deserve. Like, I feel like the alcohol industry have just sat there and gone, oh, all those poor little women, let's make some pink drinks and get them to drink more and that'll work. And it has. That's the most embarrassing thing. So they're all rubbing their hands with glee, going, oh, we created pink drinks. So they all started drinking the pink champagne and laughing about it. Haven't we done well? And at no point did anyone sit there and go, oh, but hang on a minute. A woman's body can't metabolize alcohol like a man's. A woman shouldn't be drinking significant levels of alcohol. It impacts her more. Her chances of liver disease, heart disease, stroke, and cancer are higher than they are for a man. What? No one's talking about that.
No. And alcohol is also a neurotoxin to the brain, isn't it?
Which is why it's a cause of dementia. And so I had a dementia specialist come into my last challenge and talk to us about what alcohol actually does in the brain. And it completely disrupts the neurotransmitters as well. So it takes 72 hours for alcohol to leave the system, but it can take a year or more for your neurotransmitters to rebalance after years of consistent drinking. And you don't have to be drinking a lot. Like in the studies that, like I would say to all your listeners, go and listen to the Huberman podcast episode on alcohol. It's mind-blowing. And he says on all his studies, he's not talking about people that are drinking a bottle of vodka a day. He's talking about people that are drinking around 14 units a week and how they have a higher baseline of cortisol than people who don't drink at all. So we're making ourselves more stressed. And they've actually done studies of the brain to show that people are less open to change when they drink a lot. So they become very habitual, set in their ways, and less and very risk averse. And that's so true. Like, I stayed so small in my life when I was drinking. I did, because you don't have confidence when you're hungover. You don't have huge self-belief. You don't have huge motivation. And with the removal of alcohol, it was like this. Like, a client described it to me recently as like going from living in black and white to living in color. It's like you get this, the light in your soul comes back, and you start actually just growing in confidence, growing in self-belief, and going and creating the life that you were always meant to live.
Yeah, brilliant. And I really like what you said earlier about, not drinking, going out and being with your tribe, the people that you can be yourself with. You don't need the mask of a few drinks to, be yourself, which is brilliant. So if someone's listening and, they've got all the ammunition now, they're thinking they want to be clearer thinking and reduce their risk of cancer, know themselves better, have more energy, what other benefits can we get if we stop drinking?
I would say to glowing skin. I think it's the best anti-aging secret out there. On my 30-day challenges, I get all the ladies to do a photo on day 1 and a photo on day 30, and then we compare them at the end. It's insane. Just the bloating in their face, their eyes start to sparkle, and they just start getting all these comments from people going, what have you done different? You look different. And it's literally that they're not just supplying themselves with this toxin that's very dehydrating. So it makes you look dry and dull and like more wrinkly and everything. Whereas when you're drinking tons of more water and you're looking after yourself, have a difference in your skin. Weight loss. So lots of ladies start to lose weight, particularly around the tummy. Obviously improving sleep and having more energy. Developing different relationships with children. I find that you start having deeper, authentic conversations with the people that you really love, because you're not just pissed or hungover all the time. You start dreaming bigger about the life that you want to have and the life that you want to create. People save money. They have more motivation at work and more productivity. Their anxiety will generally start to reduce. Perimenopause symptoms reduce, so hot flushes and things like that.
Sleep is a big one as well. I'm always talking about on this podcast about if I have even a glass of wine, I guarantee you I will wake up. Obviously, my liver's working to, detoxify the alcohol. But obviously, that's telling me quite loud and clearly that alcohol no longer suits me. And I hear that I hear that repeated from so many women.
Yeah, same. And there's a couple of reasons for it. And one of them is that alcohol stops us from going into all of the sleep stages that we need to go in.
Yeah.
So it's like it sedates us. So you go into that deep sleep, but then you wake up into that light sleep at that 2 or 3 o'clock. So it's quite fragmented. And what you tend to miss out on is REM sleep. And REM sleep is the really important stage of sleep that's responsible for, that's when we're dreaming. And that stage of sleep is where that's responsible, that the scientists now know, for preventing dementia, for helping with heart disease, like all these different things that happen. There's many jobs that happen in your brain while you're asleep that your brain needs to get on and do. But when it's sedated by alcohol, which would be even one glass, it can't do them. And they've done studies and shown that generally speaking, most people will have between 5 and 7 sleep cycles with REM sleep per night. And after one drink, they will usually only get 1 to 2 REM stages per night. The thing that my ladies notice as well, Amanda, is they start dreaming again. So they'll just be like, oh my God, like all these dreams that I'm having that are so vivid and stuff, because they haven't been going into REM sleep. And REM sleep is so important for our long-term health.
Wow, that's absolutely fascinating. Yeah, so you can just do that experiment on yourself, not drink for a few weeks and see if you start dreaming. It's just like, yeah, when you know these solid facts, you start thinking it's just not worth it, is it? It really isn't. For the sake of a small glass of wine or 2 glasses of wine, having that little bit of a dopamine hit, but it doesn't last. It's so short-lived.
It doesn't last. It's 20 minutes.
And you're left with all this negative,
Totally.
health effects that you have to live with on a daily basis. It's crazy, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really is. And I think it's just about getting to that point where we've passed the tipping point and we've just realized actually that little 20-minute high is not worth it. And most women get there. This is why my business has been as huge as it has in supporting thousands and thousands of women, because midlife women cannot metabolize alcohol as they age. And so we start getting all of these negative impacts. And then it's up to your listeners to sit there and go, well, am I curious enough to do an experiment and to see how I feel if I take 30 or 60 days off? Just be curious, because this is your life. And most people will go through it drinking and moaning about the impact that alcohol's having, but never seeing what the alternative might be. And I promise you, the alternative is amazing.
Yeah. Oh, you're inspiring me. Although you always think, like, already thinking, like, I'm going to do 21 days. I'm like, I'm going to Spain on Sunday. I might well have a glass of rosé there. But look, I'm going for the pink. I used to drink red wine, and now I understand why I've gone pink, and I've just totally been manipulated. And obviously that happens in the food industry as well, with ultra processed foods.
Yeah.
But we think we're so attached to something, and we think it's part of our identity, but actually we've been totally manipulated to want that bag of crisps or pink alcoholic drink. Have you got any advice for women that have tried and failed to give up alcohol? I mean, obviously they could come and do one of your courses, which sounds amazing, and I think support is probably where it's at, isn't it? But if someone's thinking, oh, I really, I've done it before and I couldn't, any key advice that you've learned from your own experience, that just a couple of pieces that might trigger someone to think, okay, I can do this.
So the average shows us that it takes between 3 and 6 attempts before it sticks.
Okay.
So, so don't be disheartened if you've tried 2 or 3 times. I think it took me 2 years from my first break until I stopped. And in that 2 years, I probably did 4 or 5 times but never was I don't think I was ever intending to do it forever at that point. But every single time I got information, and that information was what then led me to have that pivotal conversation with that friend of going, every time I don't drink, my life is better. If I didn't have that information, I couldn't have had that conversation and made the decision. And I dread to think what my life would be like if I was still drinking now. And so don't do it alone. So I always say, only you can do it, but don't do it alone. Because in a world where alcohol is constantly being sold to us and marketed and promoted, we need to be in a community with other people that are doing it with us, because that's what makes the difference. And that's why my challenges work. The second thing would be, don't be hard on yourself if you've had slip-ups. For many of us, slip-ups are part of the process. That's how we learn. That's how we learn what our triggers are. I did poll in my group, and I've got a group of 25,000, and I said, why do you drink? Or why did you drink? And there were three main reasons: boredom, stress, and loneliness. And so we've got a generation of women, most of the women in my group are between 45 and 65. We've got a generation of women who are bored, stressed, and lonely, or a combination, or one of them. And that makes sense to me, because a lot have had families, they've devoted themselves to kids and juggling work and everything else. They've not got any hobbies, they've not been doing anything for themselves. They've been relying on that glass of wine to get them through the evening. And then all of a sudden the kids are getting older, they don't need them as much, they're off for play dates and sleepovers and stuff, and suddenly you've got a whole Saturday and there's no kids at home, and you don't even know what to do with yourself because you haven't had that time to yourself for ages. And so we drink. And so this is the deeper work that I start doing with my clients around, well, what do you love doing? What do you do for fun? And most women will look at me with tears in their eyes. Go, I don't know. I don't know, because fun has just been getting pissed with my girlfriends while the kids play. And this is, instead of this being sad, this is an opportunity as a woman to discover who you are at this stage of your life and what makes you happy. I've got women who've gone back to bloody tap dancing and amateur dramatics and horse riding and joining choirs and singing on stage and taking up pottery and doing all of these new things, because they've got time, they've got money, and they've got energy. And they're not just sitting at home drinking a bottle of wine, getting a dopamine hit, sitting on the sofa, watching life pass them by, waking up at 3 a.m. hating themselves because they drank more than they intended, feeling shit all of the next day, and then the only thing to look forward to is the next drink.
Yeah, it's a sad cycle, isn't it?
But I was there for years. So
yeah, and even in I'm thinking, and I have, as I said, I've really limited, and I probably do have about 2 glasses a week, which again I'm thinking I've never done a sort of 60-day challenge, so now might be the time. But it's disassociating that it's a treat. It's something to look forward to, and then it's a treat, and it's just untangling that kind of thought process that a lot of us have. Or you get together and like, oh, we go to a hotel or we go to London, we have a lovely lunch and we have a glass of rosé, and it feels like such a treat.
Yeah.
For me, that's one of the things I have to work on, is sort of disassociating the and non-alcoholic drinks are getting better. They're getting less sweeter, but still in pubs and restaurants it can be quite hard to find something that isn't quite sugary, or it does get a bit boring just drinking water.
It does, but they're getting better. And I think, going back to your point about disassociating with that whole thing of a treat, that's where the education comes in, because we're smart women. And when you sit and read the facts about what alcohol does to women, it's really hard to then still see it as a treat, because, we wouldn't smoke 10 fags and see it as a treat. It's just been incredible marketing by an industry that spent billions brainwashing us. And I'm not denying that we don't get that 20-minute high, because we absolutely do. But at some point we have to make the decision, is it worth it? And some people might be listening to this and go, yeah, it is. And I'm not here to judge, but there'll be others that are listening to this going, it's really not worth it anymore, but I don't know how to change. I don't know how to stop, because everyone in my life drinks, all my friends drink, my partner still drinks. Who the hell am I if I don't drink? And read my book would probably be the first thing I would say, Beyond Booze, because it's got all my story in there. It's got a chapter on sober socializing and what to do with your friends. It's got a chapter on your relationship with your partner if he still drinks, and sober sex. It's got a whole chapter on stress and ways to manage and soothe stress without needing to reach for alcohol. It takes you through a self-check-in process of understanding, why do I drink? What do I get from it? What are my triggers? There's just a lot of helpful exercises for you to complete as you're reading it as well.
Brilliant. Okay. I will put the link in the show notes for anyone who wants a copy of Sarah's book, Beyond Booze. That's available on Amazon and all the usual places.
It's on Audible, so you can get the Audible version. It's on Kindle. It's on Amazon.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Well, I've had lots of questions and I think we've kind of covered them all. So amazing. Just, as a midlife goddess yourself, which you are, I'm sitting here now looking at Sarah. She does have glowing skin. She's full of energy, enthusiasm for what she does. But can you just give us a couple of tips that we can take away from this podcast and use in our everyday lives? Just talking to women of our age that are out there that are listening.
make sure you have something in your life that you do for fun, because that will keep you young and that will keep you healthy. And if you're listening to this and going, I don't have time, look at how much time you spend on your phone. And that is said without judgment, because I've been there. But, like just really reevaluating, where have I got time to add in an hour or something a week that I could do something that is for fun, that is just for me. And the second thing I would say is be curious about your relationship with alcohol, and be curious and just do a 30-day break to notice how it makes you feel. Reach out to me. My website is sarahRusbatch.com. I've got an alcohol-free challenge that runs January, April, July, October. And it's full of support and resources that will really help you to just get some perspective on what role does alcohol play in my life as the woman I am today, because I am allowed to change. And although I might have that identity that I am Amanda the party girl, Sarah the party girl, I also am allowed to change, and I give myself permission to outgrow alcohol and to actually discover what brings me joy and happiness as the woman I am. I just turned 49 and I'm approaching 50 in the best mental, physical, emotional well-being that I've ever been in my life. And I'm embracing all that comes in this next 50 years, and really, intend to show up for all of it, knowing that I've got the tools and the skills to be as healthy as I possibly can be.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Sarah. I will put all the details of how to attend one of Sarah's online courses or all the groups that she's mentioned in the show notes. I'm sure we'll all agree that was a really interesting conversation. I'm totally inspired to, give the challenge a go myself. But thank you so much for your time, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you'd like to find out more about my approach, you can find me and lots of my simple, nutritious recipes demonstrated on Instagram at Amanda Ryder Nutrition, and that's Ryder with a Y. Or you can visit my website, www.amandaryder.co.uk. Or if you like a copy of my book, Feel Good for Menopause, you can find that on Amazon. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could like, follow, or click the subscribe button. It will really help me grow the podcast and keep me going. So thank you. And of course, do get in touch. I'd always love to hear from you. So that leaves me to say I'm sending lots of love and light from my midlife goddess to yours. See you next week. Bye for now.